Hi there, welcome to the Noah Presgrove case. One of the latest discussions which has come about is the possibilities that we, the general public and those within the community, are being played along and tested like guinea pigs. There's some kind of secret experiment going on, manipulation tactics possibly, and those with authoritative roles or figures acting on behalf of who? Maybe the defendants within the wrongful death lawsuit of the Noah Presgrove case. Join me today as I share with you my thoughts on the matter with what I think. I am probably going to focus in on the general theme of manipulation today and the theme of testing the waters in cases, speaking in general, because as for how it's being talked about by the odd post on Facebook, I don't quite follow it because it's very vague, which is typical. Those that know will know, but if you're on the outside looking in, or you haven't looked into those areas or followed certain posts in recent time, probably going to be a stranger to it. So of course, if there's anyone that is present or watching right now in the live premiere, welcome. And anyone watching on catch up, be sure to drop a comment down below under the video to let me know your thoughts, what you think is going on. And if you do know or can provide any further clarity and context, it's welcome and appreciated. There has been a theme of a certain individual that's come on into the Facebook pages or groups, supposedly WJ Heel, never seen them before. I know there was a reference not long ago by one shouty person on YouTube that said WJ Heel is George Chodan. Who knows what's going on there? It just seems messy once again, but it's important to retain that level of control so then there's a sense of predictability as to what will happen next. And maybe some people already have a sense of predictability when it comes to these supposed wild claims of what people in the background are trying to do and test the waters, but how would it benefit them? How does it link to the Noah Presgrove case? Does it cause any harm in general? Who actually benefits? What's the general motive? That's if it's even happening in the first place. But I'll talk in general today, just based on my knowledge. I can't go all out like how I might have done previously with one of my videos, but you know, it is what it is. But if you are interested in any additional coverage on the Noah Presgrove case, you'd like to follow up on my previous video, which was very deep in regard to the case, all that available, top right corner of the screen where the I symbol is. The full playlist of Noah is up there. And then if you want to support the channel, the PayPal link down below in the pinned comment section is there to follow through with. So the order of what we'll do today, we'll focus in on a brief post on Facebook, what's being said, then take a look at the reactions from some that have commented. I believe Brooke Bounds Carter had replied, given her thoughts there. That'll be interesting to see. Have a quick little look at a post with credit to, I believe, Michael Facecaz when referencing WJ Heel. I asked you a question briefly here or there previous, as in, you know, this particular post on Facebook, who is it and what it's about and how was it influenced, and some suggestions by people where maybe it links back to what's being talked about or the supposed presence and what people are claiming in regard to WJ Heel. If that's, you know, linked, that's why I'll highlight it today, and then I'll give a bit of my closing thoughts or conclusion on the overall matter. So feel free to stick around or sit back and relax, and let's begin. Here we are. So you can find this post on the case discussion group 11 hours ago by Carolyn. She says, "I'm going to say what I have to say. This is my opinion." So let's just make this very clear. It's not a fact, it's an opinion. And sometimes opinions can be fair and they can have appliance, but do they on this occasion? Let's read. "We are being used like guinea pigs for some people. I will not say who, but I'm sure most of you know who." Well, first and foremost, I don't, to be honest. "One has hired a firm again, won't say who does mock trials, mock juries. In my opinion, they are throwing bits and pieces out there to see which ones will work for the trial. by replying to what they say is actually helping them see what works best in court. This is my opinion only. We should not reply for a while and watch where it goes. I really feel by us replying is hurting Noah's case. If you are not familiar with how a mock trial works, just watch an episode of Bull. That's what this show is all about. And you will understand what I'm talking about. Just lay silent for a while. Okay, I said my piece. I hope you all understand what I'm trying to say. Just my opinion. I mean, the only thing that you can say is, in fairness, they make it very clear several times it's just their opinion. So if it doesn't make sense, it is what it is. If it's not true, well, they're not stating as a fact to begin with. So somewhat appropriate language has been used here, but maybe not everyone agrees with it. In regard to some law firm being used, a mock trial, I guess roughly I could understand how that could go and how it could impact the case if it was true, like replaying it, simulating it as if it was the real thing. But using members of the general public to get replies and responses, to gather additional information, to gather means for an affirmative defense, practicing to get in those counterpoints so that when in the moment there won't be any performance anxiety and the bad ones supposedly will be able to have an answer for everything. If they practice now, or if the defense practice now, they can gather research. But if the general public are guinea pigs, how significant are the general public then when compared to the case? You'd think those within the case / possibly some general public, or more so just locals who aren't directly within the case but they know a bit or they've got insider information, you'd think they'd be going after them and not just complete strangers online. It's a little bit unusual. But you can see some reactions. We've got Rick saying, huh? It's probably one of the most genuine responses, because I think other people would be like that. Denise, what did they have to say? They're very selective in who they choose for their mock jury. They go by backgrounds of individuals, male, female, financial status, ethical groups, sometimes even orientation. I don't think anybody can figure out all of that on individuals on these pages. I also don't understand how it would possibly hurt Noah's case unless you feel things are being said that are not true and you just don't want that to get to the courtroom. But other than that, I don't understand your total opinionated point. So some defence, people in background authoritative roles, sneak on in, start discussions, ask questions, get responses from the general public of people that weren't even involved in the case to begin with. So theories, ideas and counterpoints could be used for the real thing in the future, and it could excuse the reality and try and downplay and minimise and manipulate the case. Is that how it is? We've got Judy. I think there was some back and forth with Judy and Robbie Taylor on a different post to do with other stuff. Judy here, you absolutely make sense, and I, for one, did not think about that. Also, you saying it's giving them ammunition is again true. When I looked at it from your point of view, I definitely don't want to help them out in the bull. They're trying to make those of us that have found many things that should have already brought many of them down. It's making it seem like that members of the general public seem to have be higher importance, significance, and have higher levels of classified information, which the police don't have, the victim's family don't have. I mean, maybe you get some exceptions, but how can members of the general public, complete strangers that are just simply listening into a case, have such sensitive material and be in the position that they are? What about the real people, the victims within the case? Do they have that knowledge too? Or somehow it's been leaked or found, retrieved by random people online who aren't even private investigators, not police either? How does it go to the strangers online first before it actually reaches the real people in the background? I don't get that. unless it's being shared amongst different people, so then the general public, some have found out. Well, then if they have, they should have it under control themselves. They should have their own responsibility and self-control as to where the information goes, what they say and what they don't. If it's public, it's public. End of. Whether any operation is done in the background or not, if it's public, it's out there. If it's private, and then you start having these little conversations with the so-called mock trials and experimenters in the background, well then that falls on the general public. That falls on you in that position. You've got a responsibility. You got a hold of certain material. You may know more than other members of the general public. You got it. You received it somehow in an alternative way. Maybe by key people within the case. Maybe by a victim's family member. Maybe by a party goer or a friend of a party goer. But, you know, how it's shared and talked about, yes, you're in a more powerful position than other members of the general public because you've got more knowledge and closure. However, what you do with it next, that falls on you. So if people think they're so important and have such power, well then it comes with responsibility. Andrea Chuprov, I don't think a serious legal team would rely on random social media comments to shape a trial strategy. Mock trials use controlled participants, not open discussion groups. Stranger things have happened, I suppose. Mock trials, controlled participants. There seems to be a lack of comments here. There's about 30 and there's only like 4 showing. What's happened? Let's say it to the newest, because this is something that may have missed out on in the past. I thought all comments would show all, but the newest comments show some additional ones. Very stupid. I'll take that into consideration in the future. Might as well mention it right now. If that's the case, if anyone feels like their comments aren't shown or highlighted in these videos, it might well be because of the filter that's used. It seems to be similar to YouTube, that the all comment filter does not show all comments, but the newest comments will. So stupid, right? Typical Facebook being dodgy as usual. Right, what does Mike say here? All I can say is I'm so glad the friends of Noah aren't in these groups, that they are living their best lives and don't care what a bunch of nutjobs think. Different ways of looking at that. I mean, you can say life moves on. Other people, though, could interpret it as people living their best lives as if they've just forgotten everything. It's a bit of a tightrope, in a way, tightrope. That there is zero chance of any of them facing any legal charges because they're innocent. It gives me pleasure knowing how all these people waste their time with their stupid theories, which mean nothing in the grand scheme of things. It gives me pleasure knowing that this narrative that's being pushed by all these groups to sway public opinion work on social media, and that's it. In the eyes of the law, it means nothing. I don't respond and say what I want to say because I don't care what you think, all these outlandish accusations. I mean, the original point was an opinion and that was it. It wasn't disguised as a fact, though. And people saying God will get him is actually hilarious. It's a civil lawsuit, one that's an embarrassment. The people they've included in it, right? Well, the wrongful death lawsuit is an embarrassment. All under the guise of wanting answers. Nothing comes from the lawsuit. Police aren't corrupt. Kids aren't guilty. The ironic part is all the acting like you want justice for Noah are the exact reasons he won't get it. Nobody wants the truth. They want people held accountable that they think are guilty, not how the world works. None of you even met it in this situation. Police are the ones who are actually looking for the truth. Others are all trying to benefit and have their own agendas. Laughs on all of you because all your lies and accusations mean nothing. Will it show the rest, the extension? Oh my goodness, it goes on for a bit, doesn't it? What else do we have? I honestly hope every single person who has intentionally lied in this case have the same things done to them. Miserable people who, quite frankly, have serious mental health issues. Some people lie because they will benefit, others lie because they are weird conspiracy nutjobs that aren't smart enough to think for themselves. The Army page is a prime example. The people in that group of the Army page think everyone is corrupt and fake and this and that. You do understand that none of the party goers are in these groups. None are scared of anything. They all want answers more than you do because Noah was their friends, not yours. Family has swayed public opinion from the beginning. Yes, Ashley and Robin. No, I no longer support family. I don't believe they want the truth. Whoa, okay. Let's just get an understanding of this. Mike Johnson feels that, Noah Presgrove's family doesn't want the truth. I mean, there is a full stop after I no longer support Noah's family. I don't believe they want the truth. I guess if there was a comma and not a full stop, it could apply to the same people he no longer supports. So just based on interpretation alone from what I read here, supposedly Mike thinks that Noah Presgrove's family, the victim's family, don't want the actual truth for Noah. Wow. I mean, where do we start? I'm just checking through because there's a lot of wording and text here. Mentions of the army page. I mean, the bit about partygoers aren't in these groups. I mean, arguably, there might have been a time where they were, or in one or some, or at least the parents or friends of friends of the partygoers were in certain groups, such as the original Justice page for Noah, the family-run one, then they were removed later. Even the army page in the earlier days before people were removed, kicked, and then it went private. You know, I'm sure Caden Pressey was a part of one or two of these groups in the past, and he is a party goer. So it might be a little bit incorrect what Mike says in regard to that. But what else do we have here? Mike says, this is implying the timestamps aren't correct, yet acknowledging police have them. I sent her the snaps before anybody else saw them in the groups. So, Mike, when you say I sent her the snaps, you mean Robin Smith? And which snaps? Snapchat photos? Is it the one of Mikey Lair in bed at 5:27 in the morning of Monday with Logan and Jasmine, and then the snap earlier at 4:30 of Carter Combs and Logan after coming back from searching for Noah, supposedly? Is that what you're referring to, Mike? If you're watching, or anyone else on behalf of Mike, just leave a bit of confirmation in the comment section for context. So, you see a little screenshot there. Try and click on it if it'll allow me to. This is from Reddit in the past, maybe 1 year ago, if not longer. Professional feed, Noah's aunt, also known as Robin Smith, had said they weren't posted for LE, they were posted to try to sway public opinion. LE has the snaps along with the accurate timestamps. What's this about, really? They weren't posted for LE. They were posted to sway public opinion. To sway public opinion, they must have been posted public. But which ones posted public exactly? Is it a year ago when I did my video analysis of those snaps that were released, the never seen before ones? Because it might have come about on the odd Facebook page, but they were released at a delayed point because of police not wanting them to be released and then giving the thumbs up, and then those in the background able to send them on to me when the time was right so it wouldn't cause any problems. Is Robin Smith here suggesting that the timestamps of 5:27, Mikey in bed with the girls, is wrong, and Logan and Carter early at 4:30 is wrong, and it's not the true timestamp, but the police have the real timestamp? I don't know. They're talking about snaps, as in Snapchat. And out of all of them, which ones can I think of? The ones that I've mentioned. The other one, which was a video of Pepe Guam, a Texas boy, and Mikey Lair, but he was under a traffic barrel, an object, and that was at 2:32 in the morning, I think. Weird. What else? Here she says all the phones were wiped. That's a lie. She admits police have the snaps, so all the information was retrieved from the phones. Well, yeah. I mean, let's just make one thing clear. If this is what one or some of Noah's family members says, you can't blame the general public for reiterating it without re-quoting or giving the source where it came back from. So this is the thing. For that balance and that perspective in the past, when people kept going on about the phones were wiped, there are snaps, but the timestamps aren't true, and there's all dodginess going on in the background. I kept hearing that from the general public. That wasn't good enough. I wanted it from the horse's mouth. And it seems like, we're getting it now? Even though this is old, it's the first time I'm seeing this. So, from what I can remember, it's the first time. So Robin Smith had said, we know that the phones were wiped. I'm not sure where the new phone's rumour came up. Unless it was because OHP had sent 2 phones off and it took months for them to be returned. Oh wait, no, I remember that bit now. Yeah, unless it was because OHP had 2 phones off. Right, I remember that now. Okay. But yeah, we know that the phones were wiped. You can understand that when members of the general public see it from the victim's family stating it, you might be more likely to believe in it, and then it spreads and spreads. But you know what the problem is? All the people that join in with that and reiterate that claim, saying, we know the phones are wiped, or I've seen it, I've heard it mentioned by people in the case. Give the name, at least. Give the name so it protects yourself. Because when strangers make such a strong claim statement like that, it just sounds like it's coming from them, or they've heard it from a mysterious person. And as for reliability and trust, it's just not there. It's hard to believe in it. And even if this was wrong, it's good to be able to know where it traced back to originally. So anyone watching, you let me know your thoughts with what Robin had said previously. How do I get out of it? Right. So timestamps aren't correct, yet police have the correct timestamps. Okay. Still don't know what the snaps are. As for the context of which photos and videos, if anyone can explain that down below. So LE has evidence and material of footage from these people's phones. But, I mean, if you wipe your phone, you'd have to delete all your social media, your accounts, and everything completely. If you wiped your phone and the only videos and photos that you had weren't uploaded to social media, but they were just simply stored in the gallery of your phone, then they're gone for good, especially if they're not backed up. If you had them in your gallery and you also posted and uploaded them to online, if you just wipe your phone without actually manually deleting your social media accounts or post online, then one thing goes, the other thing remains online. So it's not truly wiped. Depends how it was done and if it was done. My December 2023, she is talking about suing herself, not about getting answers. Police have told her plenty. Why not sue them? If you don't trust police, I'm not related to anyone involved. Family lawyers can contact me if they want. What's this about? Right, so this is Facebook Messenger. Robin replied to Robin, I think. It's time to slap them with wrongful death and get a lawyer. Interesting. I don't know. Does it give a date, time, and who with exactly? Because when reading this, or at least the earlier response, what Robin had said, the wrongful death lawsuit, Robin at one point in the past was reluctant in following through with it because of the timing, I think. But actually, then again, got to make it clear, wrongful death lawsuit by the family, their decision. The social hosting petition was separate and earlier before this. Got to make sure I don't get mixed up between them. Wrongful death lawsuit does involve the social hosting part, but the petition created by Michael Facecas was earlier, in the earlier days, which Robin did not approve of, and Ashley Chadwick. I guess they changed their mind down the line. Robin here. I don't know if I can file the suit. Doesn't it have to be Casey, as in Noah's mom, or the father Victor, or the sister Madison, maybe Deborah, the grandmother? These type of conversations and messages I've never seen before, so it's new to me. It might be new to you, but where's the whole suing of Robin suing herself? I think she was just following up on a previous comment she made about the wrongful death lawsuit, as in, we need to get the wrongful death lawsuit going, get the people slapped with it and associated so they can face the justice. But in order to start it, to begin, we need the right person to be able to initiate. That's all it is from interpretation there. Let's go like that. Right. So that appears to be it off the thread here with what Mike is getting at. Some interesting screenshots, of course. What else do we have? I don't answer questions after I give my opinion about this case. That's called common sense. Sherry, I don't believe I've ever seen such conspiracy drama in any other case I've followed. Well, Sherry, if you've ever got free time, make sure to check out the Dylan Rounds case. That's on a whole new level of conspiracy drama, believe me. You think the Noah Presgrove case is wild? Dylan Rounds was 100 times more wild. It is partially documented on my channel and beyond, if you're interested. Thinking anything said in this group will help or hurt Noah fools around. The jury pool isn't coming from a discussion group. The paranoia is real. When you list all the conspiracy, it starts to look even more crazy. Melissa says, I trust no one but Jesus. Okay, there we go. Robbie, Carolyn is a perfect example of an emotional thinker. You could base it off emotions, and in a way what Robbie says here is a fair point, because emotions can stem back to opinions. Opinions can be feelings. Opinions are different to facts. Facts can be more critical, statistical, and all of that. It's not a weakness of Carolyn, but if it overstepped the line in the case or caused any confusion, misdirection, trouble, then it is a problem. But if Carolyn is an emotional thinker and they're basing their thoughts, ideas off opinions tied back to their emotions, if it's kept in check, then there's no harm. See, previously in the past, we've dealt with people that will base theories and ideas, but they change the words to facts, like they did happen, they have happened, and it stems back from an emotional opinion. That's dangerous when you change the wording. If you address whatever you're saying as an opinion and that's it, you're setting the record, you're making it clear, and then people can choose to believe in it or not, and then it just goes from there. The only exception, I guess you could say, is one emotional thinker can lead to a wave of many emotional thinkers, others that may react and overreact, and it becomes intense and people go off down the deep end, and other people end up wording it as something else. You know, Carolyn, originally just an opinion. Other people come along with emotional thoughts and then change the words, reiterate it elsewhere with Chinese whispers. That can cause problems. We've got Brooke Bounds Carter says exactly as well. This is absolutely hilarious. If you're referring to any of the defendants in the wrongful death case, I'm actually laughing so hard at this. Truly hilarious. Now, there might be some additional comments which may come about. I'm just looking at it at this moment in time of recording. But WJ Heel, in which we may have made a brief reference to it earlier, he's commented as well here, saying, nice research on your part, I admire that, but no, my jury consulting firm is not working for the defendants. So this person's of legal authority and all of that, so maybe what the crossover is. Brief part mentioned by Michael Fazkaz, which we'll get to a bit later, but my jury consulting firm, which this person is associated with, is just not working for the defendants in the case, like Avery, Carter, Logan, Stevie, Johnny Trout, Wilcox, and etc. And no social media responses are not the focus of jury research. Social science is more sophisticated than that, and mock trials are enormously expensive. A small one will cost you $50,000. Very unlikely anyone in a tiny trial in Oklahoma will be using one. One more thing, if you think the fictional jury consultant on a TV show depicts reality, good luck. Right, oh, there's quite a few. We'll just briefly go through it. Christy, you are kind of a jerk. Why do you always add some tidbit of insult in everything you comment on? Well, there's many people in the case that can add insults, fam. You said you only do that if someone comes at you, and in that case, rudeness is justified. I don't see anywhere in this lady's post that attacked you personally. Here you are insulting her opinion. I mean, yeah, you could say it's a bad opinion. It's not a true opinion. It's not, some could push it and say it's not an intelligent opinion, but an opinion is an opinion and that's it. If you don't like it, you avoid it. If you agree with it, you may respond. Should be as simple as that. If the opinion was slanted towards any named people in particular and it was said in a negative tone with certain insulting words, well then the other person has every right to respond back, right? Just like how I do on my channel. That's how I do it, in a way. So yeah, it goes on quite a bit. If you want to read it, you can. You want to pause it, feel free. But let's just move on. There we go, Carolyn. I'm going to break my silence for this. Oh, here we go. Let's get something straight right here. Never have I called anyone a murderer. Show me where. You can't. Do you feel guilty for thinking this is all about you? You're a prosecutor. Since when do prosecutors investigate crimes? I never heard of it. I'm sure others haven't either. Now I made this about you. Right, confirming that. And people who say God gave you cancer because he hates, whatever, strange. I don't think it's all about me, but if you think for a second anyone who reads your post doesn't know you are attacking me, then I have a bridge to sell you. Well, I didn't know directly that the post was about W.J. Heal, because whilst W.J. Heal has come about and people have done the research or the claims and the counterpoints and all of that, I've been too busy covering other cases like the Kenny Veach case, the Rebecca Zahau case, my own videos on the Noah Presgrove case, getting so deep in other areas of high importance that this is new to me, so I'm not going to know, right? I'm sure there's other people that won't know because they're doing other stuff, they're busy with other areas of the case. It is possible. You're entitled to your opinion, but your opinion attacked my integrity with false claims. When I post, it's about actual facts of the case. If you challenge my analysis of the facts with a contrary analysis of the facts, I may debate you. Right, it goes on, doesn't it? You're giving Jan Fiorillo a run for her money in terms of long comments. You are accusing real people of real awful things. Nurse friends, your opinion causes real pain to real people, and yes, your false claims in the post about me does lead to sickos hoping for my death. Inflame. Christy. Oh look, another response that says the same thing all over again. You're not only a jerk, but a repetitive bore. I mean, you were talking about broken records. I mean, we've seen a few of them elsewhere. You go ahead and have the last word in this. I know your type. Ooh, okay. Right. Prosecutors do not investigate crimes, but he ignores any valid question you may have. Robbie, how do you expect people to react when people accuse him of stupid BS? He's a former prosecutor and doesn't believe Noah was murdered. Let's go with our go-to, he must be getting paid. I don't think we've really had too many experts or former experts in certain roles that have engaged in the public discussions over time collectively. There's been cross-references from other papers, news articles, which I think Robbie Taylor made a reference to in recent times, saying how one expert or one quote that came about onto Daily Mail wasn't exactly true, and it came from originally a different source, which is known for misinformation. And the supposed expert that was interviewed or re-quoted, was saying how, based on the injuries of Noah, it comes down to a beating. And then that was posted by Daily Mail. I think Robbie Taylor was suggesting that that expert either never said that it was a true beating, or the words may have been either misunderstood or slightly twisted. I mean, if that's the case, it creates more trust issues, I guess. It's one thing having trust issues with strangers online, members of the general public, but then having trust issues with official media groups and news outlets, you can't trust that. What can you believe then? Where do you look? And then if there was any trust issues with those within the case or authoritative roles, it really does feel like a bit of a lost hope then. That's why you need some anchor, some beacon point of some hope somewhere. We're kind of tying it all together with some of these discussions now, because she aimed her post at him. She made rude remarks on his post last few days, right? I mean, I know I did a video and there's odd reference to events in the past, and then another person came about and said, and went into detail about the thing, defending themselves, and I was like, well, never mentioned your name, never mentioned any statistics. This isn't to do with WJ Hill. It's to do with something else. And no name was truly mentioned whatsoever, no backstory days or weeks before that. So for a person to come out like that, it's like a indirect fishing. You're doing your own thing, mind your own business, and then suddenly someone catches onto the hook, pull it out, and then it's talking to you like a talking fish, and you're thinking, oh, what's the problem here? You start talking and talking, it seems like you're making it all about yourself. No, that's the case, then maybe it says more about you than me, and maybe there's a level of doubt within yourself. That's what I mean. I don't think it's happened in the past with previous cases and humans. Certain people that like to make it all about themselves or think highly of themselves in unnatural ways, and then they get caught within it all, especially if they've already got pre-existing negative outlooks towards a said individual like myself. Does that apply here? Who knows? Sorry, I'm sorry these hateful people are messaging you. Oh, we got Carl, I think, remember them in the past. I was on a mock trial before, to do with in the past. Needless to say, it didn't end the way they wanted, and they never sued the insurance. But it is just like the real. Did you enjoy? Right. Yeah, we've seen that one. Right, so didn't really miss out on too many comments there, but speaking of WJ Hill, let's just briefly refer back to some previous one on one of Michael's posts. You can find this particular post on the Presgrove project posted by Michael Facecaz, Trial Consulting, and the WJ Hill question. This is 5 days ago, so this is before Carolyn's comment in regard to WJ Hill, but I just thought I'd add it in for a bit of backstory behind how things could have become more inflamed and ideas and inspiration came from it in some way, as for questions and suspicion. There is as well a follow-up update as of 25 minutes ago by I think Robbie Taylor, so I'll try and include that in this video. Take in mind, this is a pre-recorded video, so some things may be included, others may not be, but it just depends on the time of when I've made the video as to when comments and responses post came about. So just take that into consideration. Update videos can always be included. So Michael had said, a documented industry, a similar name and reasonable questions. Let's begin with what is verified, documented facts. Decision Quest is a nationally known trial consulting firm founded in 1990. It later operated under Trial Quest and was acquired by US Legal Support in 2019. The firm advertises services including jury research, mock trials, witness preparation, and narrative strategy in high-risk criminal and civil cases. You see how it mentioned there about mock trials, and that's like what Carolyn was referring to, mock trials, these firms and defense teams coming gone in online supposedly, querying people, members of the general public, gathering intel and information to be able to apply in the background, maybe as a form of preparation for the said defendants, a form of strategy to reduce exposure to the wrongful death lawsuit and reduce the responsibilities besides the affirmative defence. I guess how this is made of how it came from when trying to link one with the other. Bill Healy has been publicly identified in multiple mainstream news reports as a vice president at Decision Quest Chicago office, a jury consultant, a former Chicago prosecutor. Those connections are documented. The W.J. Hill similarity, separately an individual using the name W.J. Hill, has appeared across multiple Noah Presgrove discussion pages. If I'm correct in saying, is W.J. Hill a newer addition to the community? You know, have they come about within the last month? Because I don't remember seeing them in the past, at least. But, you know, at the end of the day, these cases can really gather anyone's interest and anyone can come in at any given time, really. This individual states he has a law enforcement or prosecutorial background, engages consistently in refuting, reframing, and diluting key case narratives, presents himself as a former Chicago prosecutor. Here is where the question arises. The name W.J. Heel is strikingly similar to William Healy. What, because of the last name, Healy, Heel, and W.J., W stands for William. What does the J stand for then? Middle name. What's William Healy's middle name then? Does it start with a J? Both are associated with Chicago prosecutorial backgrounds. One is documented as a professional trial consultant. There is currently no public documentation confirming that W.J. Heel and Bill Healy are the same individuals. That distinction matters, but the similarities is notable enough to ask questions carefully. Right. A fair hypothetical question: if the individual known as W.J. Heel were in fact connected to professional trial consulting, and if such consulting involves paid narrative strategy work, then a reasonable question follows: why would someone with that background be deeply involved in this case's online discourse unless there were a vested interest in the outcome? That is not an accusation, it's a logical inquiry, and if one person is involved, how many of us might be? Trial consulting engagements often include behavioural analyst, narrative strategist, former prosecutors, social media monitoring specialist, data analysis. This is rarely a one-person effort. You can let me know your thoughts as to what you think with that. Do you agree with what Michael's suggesting here? It is 5 days ago. Things may have changed since. I believe there was another post by W.J. Heel talking about they're dealing with cancer for the last 4 years or so. That's probably why it links back to the reference comments on the earlier post, what we saw, where people were wishing that person to pass or for illnesses to take over quicker, which is a dark way of looking at it, of course. With that being said, let me just give you my follow-up thoughts in regard to Carolyn's post. My thoughts on the matter: do I agree with what Carolyn is getting at in regard to a mock trial, higher-ups or authority in the background working within these case and groups? I mean, I've not seen any hard evidence of that myself because I don't engage on Facebook that much to begin with. If we're talking about other platforms like YouTube, I've not seen that whatsoever. I've not seen any dodgy people or informants or specialists or anything like that acting in weird, sneaky ways on my channel, at least. There's more chances of that happening in the Kenny Veach case. People working for the government, Area 51, military, agencies, much deeper and darker than the Noah Presgrove case, 100%. You want proof of that, you can look back at my videos and the research done and all the weird developments that are happening still to this day. But talking about the Noah Presgrove case, got to be realistic within a way. And maybe not everybody can think to that scale if they don't have experience with previous true crime cases. It's not all the time, but whilst I go from case to case, even though I've not covered that many myself because I stick with one for quite some time until it's resolved or reaches a complete dead end, I do find that there's a handful of people, quite a lot, that come on in within the community as locals or from afar, get involved, interested, invested, maybe some emotionally connected, right? And it can be their first time really participating in a true crime discussion or case. A handful of people get involved because they're probably interested in true crime or more so serial killers from the past, but in terms of actively participating first time round. So with that lack of experience, you're not really going to know patterns and trends or what it is normally like for typical cases which may involve a certain outcome of death or a certain location, a certain country, what to expect. And previously I've covered the Dylan Rounds case, true crime related. I briefly looked at the Idaho 4 case, true crime related, looked at Noah Presgrove case, and if we're talking about interference in the background and people online, like what Mike was getting at specifically in regard to, it's a good thing people's public opinions don't ultimately set the pace and tone for the experts and those within the case as for the outcome of what happens, because it would be a bit messy. I get that. I can link it back to a brief knowledge, at least at the time when it came to the Idaho 4, the college one, Moscow, Idaho case with Brian Koberger, and strong communities and people online pushing it as to who did it and who's responsible. And there was a female TikToker with her audience blaming some professor or teacher at the university within the area for either being responsible or knowing something. Turned out to be innocent. Wrongful person accused. I think there's some repercussions as well. But you got someone on TikTok, bit of an influencer with an audience, they state something or word it in a fact, the audience probably will follow and support, can gain tension, traction, and the police listen to it or consider it and follow on with a lead, and it turns out to be a dead end, a waste of time, wasting police time, wasting the case time. Not a good look. Consequences all around for different people and the victims at hand in the case. That's what can happen with Noah Presgrove if it hasn't already. So I understand that theme there with my experience and knowledge with previous cases. In regard to manipulation and guinea pigs, not seeing that in Noah Presgrove myself with where I am and where I operate, there might be a difference. In terms of the Dylan Rounds case, guinea pigs testing, some could argue that, but in that case, it was more a chain, an order. It was like a food chain, order of command, a hierarchical system of general public people, just random people online, somehow claiming to have more insider information than other members of the general public. And sometimes those in the public space having more information than the actual victim's family or what the police have gathered with time. And then how it's released, it's public before it's handed in privately at times, and how it's dealt with, it's drip fed. When you drop breadcrumbs, it's like playing a game, it's like teasing someone, and it doesn't have to be in a case, it can be a real life setting where you leave breadcrumbs behind to entice people, to please someone, to let them know that you're still there and present, but really dragging things out. And in a case, true crime, it can be quite tormenting. It's like mind games, or it's done with true intent, or it's somehow misunderstood and there's a form of innocence behind it, stalling tactics, being nervous and unsure and uncertain. It's understandable, but in certain circumstances when hopes are risen and you don't get what you wanted or what's promised, or it's half-hearted, the attempt, it can have its own psychological repercussions on the person exposed to it. A food chain, I would call it in the Dylan Rounds case, but in terms of a mock jury or, defense teams coming in to the community and commenting on behalf of others, on behalf of the defendant, on behalf of the true murderer James Brenner, never saw that. So it's important to acknowledge that each case can be different and there's not always trends and patterns which carry on over, right? So you look at the Noah Presgrove one, which is different to others, you might get an anomaly, you might get added interest in some ways, but we have to be realistic with the concept of, as important as the Noah Presgrove case is, and as important as it is to get the closure and a fair outcome in the end, how popular is the case really? I know people like to say it's touched, worldwide and it's well known, but let's be honest, you go to YouTube, who's really covering the Noah Presgrove case over the last year? Nearly over the last 2 years, who has been covering the Noah Presgrove case religiously, often and consistent? Forget me, who else has? Exactly. You go to TikTok, the platform, you look at the Noah Presgrove case coverage, who's covering it there? I'm not going to claim and say I'm consistent over there, because it's not my main platform. Dealing with YouTube is. TikTok, file size, video size limit. I can't upload everything over there, and the upload schedule and the timing is very long compared to YouTube. But talking about just videos here and there, who are making videos on Noah Presgrove on TikTok, maybe consistently or in more recent time? Hardly anyone. This is what the unfortunate reality is. The Noah Presgrove case is important, but it's not popular, or at least it's no longer popular, and it's not been popular for quite some time. If you just want to use my statistics on my videos on my channel, you want to use other people's statistics on other YouTube channels at different points, you can see collectively it has all gone downhill. You know, maybe in the past, if I did a video and it got 1,000 views, another person did a video and they would get 600 to 700 views. But if I do a video now and I get 400 views, if someone else was to do it, they would probably get 230 views. There's a certain ratio to it, and it's all gone downhill across all areas. I've seen it myself. It's not about downplaying the significance of Noah. It's just about being realistic, critically and statistically, but it's no longer of the majority of people's interest out there. The regulars, the diehard fans, the regular supporters from here to Facebook and Reddit, regardless of what side, regardless of critical and emotional thinkers, the people that remain in the case and community, Facebook, Reddit, YouTube, shout out to the people, even if it is messy and problematic at times. Because in some way, somehow, when you've got people in their own ways, even if it's misinterpreted, and others that make it clear, trying to keep the case alive, at least, that is a good thing. And the reason why I acknowledge it is because other cases which I've covered, moved away from to do other stuff, if I've returned back to that case, there are people still covering it in some way, making videos or doing discussions, comments, engaging, and they never left. They kept that stronghold present. They never abandoned the castle. You know, they stayed. And, you know, that's a good thing, really. Because stamina, working with information and material can be limited at times. There's only so much that you can do and talk about. So if people are still present, still fighting within the right way or in their own way for Noah, that's a positive. Because you look at the official media groups and newspapers, they've pretty much given up on Noah Presgrove. You don't see constant coverage there, do you? You might with the Idaho 4 case. You might with what other cases are out there which are popular in the US. But for Noah Presgrove, official news coverage, they've given up on Noah. Big YouTube channels, they gave up on Noah indirectly in the first place because they weren't there to stick around and cover it. They do one video, tell a regurgitated story of the original early days and piss off and move on to something else. That it's just their style. You can't expect more from them. It's understandable. But just in terms of standing one's ground, you don't see that too much. And it's one of the reasons as to why the case can, you know, go down in popularity. If the Noah Presgrove case received consistent official news coverage and by media groups within reason, and if bigger YouTube channels stuck with this case constantly besides me, yeah, there would be competition. Yeah, it would be a bit more saturated. Maybe I would struggle in statistics if other bigger people are taking over, but for the sake of the case, it would inflate it more and keep it afloat with more noise. What I'm trying to say is, and how this links back to the original point of what I was talking about, is the more popular something is, the more eyes and attention that's on it, the more likely it'll be of interest to possible forms of manipulation, testing, and guinea pigs. But if you're dealing with a smaller case or a case that isn't as well known now, and it's some like small town or local situation that's happened in Oklahoma Terrell, how many people in a dark way are going to be of interest within, right, we need to do this within the case, we need to infiltrate it, we need to go deep, we need to go to great lengths to hide the truth. How deep is it really? How dark is it really? And to what scale? You know what I'm saying? When people go to such great lengths, there's got to be a good enough reason and a strong enough motive. What is that at loss? At what cost? What is on the line? Is this on the same levels of Area 51, the Pentagon's secrets being revealed finally, pyramids opening up, water being dredged out of the ocean and revealing underground aliens? No, it's not quite a high-level security threat or breach like that. It's a case that's happened in Terrell, Oklahoma, with a smallish population. It's not about downplaying the importance of Noah Presgrove or the outcome. That's still important. But in terms of the themes of cover-ups and corruption, because it's a smaller case in a smaller area, how intense is it going to be and how long would that last? And these new methods and tactics being applied, how likely is that to be? And just in terms of being paid off and, corrupted, the reason why I don't jump in on that and agree with it is because of how it's been aimed at me and the attitude there, and how it's been aimed at police and how it's gone there as for the outcome. If you're talking about true corruption, even with a very small case, but it was of some people's interest within the case to protect themselves or protect others because there was a lot on the line, okay, they might go to great lengths and depths if it's that important to them or someone that they care about. However, if for some reason you were to pay off the police, like small town, people know everyone, and it's people protect one another regardless of the position in life or the status maybe. If you got family members of some party goers paying off the police, and at a time there was a point where it was treated as a hit and run or something like that, or an accident, you would think that if police were truly paid off, they would have stuck with the story of a hit and run and not completely ruled it out, or it'd be suggested it being ruled out and treated as something else. You know what I'm saying? Or like when it was first deemed as suspicious, and then it went from suspicious to not suspicious, but just unknown of as the cause of death. Suspicious can imply foul play, murder, right, just in general. If the police were looking at it like that, and if those within the case didn't want it to be that way because it brought too much attention and eyes on the people caught up in the case, you paid the police off, it would be, right, we're no longer treating it as suspicious, we're treating it as something else. As for hit and run or possible form of criminality, we'll move away from that and focus on something else, or we'll incorporate the idea of an accident and we'll push it that way and we won't leave it as unsolved. You get what I'm saying? You'd hope that if you're paying someone off in a corrupt way, that they will change the direction and then they will adjust the narrative of the story, the case, and even make it official. So then future people, when they see it, they won't question it the same way as the early people did, as suspicious. But it didn't happen that, did it? Because even if it had gone from, or looking to be suspicious, to kind of unknown, the unknown is still dark. The unknown still shows that there's a lack of progress, there's a lack of closure. So for a case or investigation to be closed, it's not truly, because it's just unknown of, and the uncertainty keeps the case kind of open even if it went cold or was given up on. And for those doing any paying off in the background and corruption, they would want the case to be closed as soon as possible, or like officially reaching some closure, even if it wasn't to the satisfaction of the other people, the victim's family, victim's friends, and people in the community. But it's not gone that way. So true corruption hasn't worked or didn't work, because if it did, it wouldn't be the way it is. I know people like to say, people know what happened within the case, and if they spoke up at the start, the case would have been solved by now. Well, I could throw it back and say those who are supposedly corrupt and have paid off police and other authorities, if they really were corrupt, if there was real paying off as well, the case wouldn't be as it is right now, as in uncertain. It would have reached a true end, a true outcome, even if it wasn't the one that you wanted. Like when people say about me being paid off and there's corruption there. If that really was the case, and people from the dark side paid off Warlike Wrath to cover areas on Caden Pressey and others, as in others who did it to themselves in the mistakes that they made and the way they presented themselves and the inconsistencies at times and not staying true to their words, that's on them. But somehow I'm to blame for that, and the dark side are to blame for that too somehow, for other people's actions, even though they're fully grown adults. If there was true corruption there somehow, though, and I'm paid off by the dark side, and I'm covering it from one side, yeah, but in recent time, and it's all documented on my channel, no videos have been removed, there's a handful of videos where I've looked at the wrongful death lawsuit, or people in the background, Kathy Bingham at one point, supporting the idea of foul play, murder, a cover-up, back roads being used to get to the Sandplank crossing to dispose of Noah's body. The side-by-side rollover around the back, the pasture, and where Noah was supposedly loaded up into the back of the side-by-side, then driven off and disposed of, as mentioned by Kathy Bingham, right? Other mentions of the side-by-side rollover, Noah being partially injured, unknown to him, playing it off as cool, later walking away, realising that things weren't too good, being in a vulnerable state, and if in the presence of anyone else, an attack, a fight, a disagreement, more vulnerable, more prone to not being able to defend oneself and the lack of defensive wounds as well. I've suggested that foul play, the mystery of items going missing, and if it was genuine and natural the case, there'd be no reason for items to go missing. They should all stay as they were and not be touched whatsoever. I've covered all that and beyond, and I've returned back to it in recent time. So if people are still showing support from the dark side now, even though they know that I'm covering it from other perspectives like murder and foul play within reason, you would think either, well, more likely they would stop supporting, they would stop paying one off. You're paid off to change a narrative and to fixate on it one way, one-sided tunnel vision, and not consider anything else ever again. I've considered as much as I can, everything that I can think of, while still covering it from a particular unpopular opinion side, then returning back elsewhere to the other perspectives. And what's happened? Have they complained? No. Have they been patient? Yes. Have they pulled out in giving? No, they do it when they can, when they want. That doesn't change. There's not like a consistent pattern or cycle as to when things come about or when things happen. It's when people want to and when they can support the channel. I don't know when it's going to happen. I don't know when super chats or super stickers come about. It's all like a surprise to me, and it's a positive one like that. I mean, yeah. I mean, what's another example? There was times in the past, like last year when it came to my birthday, which is the 18th of February. So I'll probably do a video tomorrow because be consistent, and it's what I normally do, doing videos almost every day. Keep cases alive. I'll do a birthday video tomorrow, but I'll still keep it focused on a particular case, maybe this one or another. You look back to the one last year, people showed support in positive ways, which was really nice to see. Was that as a means of being paid off? No. It's just people saying happy birthday. Nothing corrupt about a person's birthday, right? So, you know, people in the background that say, oh, this and that happens only when this person's present or only when that's talked about. No, completely wrong. You look back at hard evidence and research and the timeline, you see it's a variety of stuff. That's all. So the true corruption aspect is if you're going to pay for something, you want a certain service, a job, and a good outcome, and keep it as that. The fact that I'm still covering and pivoting all over for that full perspective, there can't be corruption. There's corruption when you change and you don't return back to what you once were doing or once were. I've gone back, I've gone forth, I've gone left, I've gone right, in between to fulfill that perspective. That can't be corruption. So it's just humans, unusual people out there, anomalies themselves in what they've said. So I think because of the size of the case and how everything's gone, the corruption aspect may have been blown out of proportion in a way that it might have lost its original sense and purpose to begin with in the earlier days, from an opinion emotionally to it getting out of control down the line, and the critical part being lost. I've shown you the critical part based on if there's true corruption, this is how it's going to go, not like that. I guess people haven't picked up on it with time. So, that being said, what we do need to do now is just look at some updates, I think, by Robbie in regard to WJ Heel as for a backstory with him. Whether it counters what Michael's getting at or Carolyn's point, we just need to fill it in for the perspective. Once again, this can be found on the case discussion group by Robbie Taylor. They say the lack of basic detective skills lately is honestly wild. So let's continue with debunking these wild rumours. Some people have decided that anyone who disagrees with them or questions bad information must be a fake account or secretly related to the defendants in the Noah Presgrove case. Now, we've even seen claims that WJ Heel was hired by the defence, which is also completely untrue. None of this is based on facts, just rumours started by another Noah's page and someone with an ulterior motive. By saying another page in regard to Noah, that could hint at the Noah Presgrove Army page. I wouldn't know because I was kicked and blocked from that page previously in the past when false claims were made about Warlike Wrath attacking them because of Melissa LeQuay, but I never did anything wrong. People got the pants in the twist. And no one ever apologised either, so very disappointed. Beside that, goes on to say, this screenshot below, which we'll get to shortly, makes something very clear. Jan Fiorillo admits she made up the rumour that I was Jose. It wasn't a fact, it was a fabricated story that people ran with because it fit a narrative they already wanted to believe. Now, to be clear, I am absolutely not offended to be accused of being Jose. I hear she's pretty intelligent and a good person. From what I can remember, and I'm not sure if it's going to be mentioned down below, but one of the reasons why Jan Fiorillo made it up about Robbie Taylor being Jose, or Jose, no way, Jose, is because there was a group chat in the past which was leaked, and it was to do with a little gathering of Jan Fiorillo, the dog ambassador. I don't want to mention the name because we might summon the demonic entity right now, and I don't really want that. It involved Michael Faye's Kaz and maybe Pam and a few other people, and it was to do with forming a pact, an agreement, a non-disclosure agreement or something. And a false claim was made to test the waters to see who would go along with it or who would leak it in some way. And I think Jan had said that Michael Faye's Kaz and the dog ambassador had ended up leaking it, and they were idiots or something like that. I'm just summarising it. Robbie Taylor, do you remember that? There were some screenshots to do with it in the past. Anyone else watching, you let me know in the live chat if you remember that. It was kind of eye-opening at the time. Just wanted to give that in case it's not mentioned down below. It could be, but just wanted to remember it. Now, Robbie says, constantly accusing people of being fake accounts, paid actors, or part of some hidden network doesn't make anyone more credible. It just shows an inability to rumours from reality. If you're unable to separate rumours from reality, what does it say about your theories? This kind of nonsense pulls attention away from Noah. Every rumour, every baseless accusation, every imaginary connection distracts from the real unanswered questions in the case. If the goal is truth and accountability, then people need to stop inventing stories and start focusing on verifiable facts. Edit, to correctly spell Josie's name, gosh, you think if I was her, I could spell my own name, right? Yeah. I mean, for me, I won't forget the age that I am because all I have to do is look at the year that it is, and whatever the year is, that's my age, or soon to be, as in tomorrow, for example. My birthday's tomorrow. Let's just focus in on the screenshots here. We can't even fit it on. That's not a good sign. So a Facebook chat in the past, Jan Fiorillo says, wait, those screenshots were DM'd from... Ooh, do I say the name? I don't want to summon the demonic entity. Right. Well, you can see the name on screen. I'm not going to read it out. I'm not reading it. Nope, I'm not. You can say it out loud in your head if you want. It was DM'd from that person. I was on my phone and just assumed those were from George Choden because my eyesight ain't what it used to be. That's even funnier now. And then someone replied, I have screenshots from tons of people with that named individual. Anything that y'all have talked about has been sent to, I know, 7 people. There we go. Here it is. So I did remember it. Jan Fiorillo said, please share. I had a legally binding non-disclosure agreement in place with that individual with the J. Between us girls, that tidbit about Robbie being Jose was a plant to test the non-disclosure agreement was not being violated because I had some suspicions. It circled back in less than 15 minutes. And then the person responds back saying, it wasn't just the J person either, but sweet old Michael Facecaz as well, responsible. And then Jan Fiorillo says, does not surprise me at all. Unfortunately, neither one of Michael Facecaz or J have anything of value worth suing them over. Lol, although I wouldn't mind having my attorney send them some scared letters. Lol. Well, there we go. Do we have a comment down below? Well, we've got some more screenshots. Pam Feldman Garrison to WJ Hill. For the sake of bringing closure to the issue of you and who you may work for, I'm going to ask a couple of questions that can hopefully clear up this once and for all. Do you or any alias you may use to include Bill Healy, Bill Heel, William Heel, William J. Heel, William J. Healy, William Healy, Bill J. Heel, Bill J. Healy, WJ Healy, WJ Heel, and any entities, LLCs, or business associated with your namesake aliases, work for any of the defendants or their representatives and or associates in a capacity regarding the Noah Presgrove case. Are you receiving compensation of any kind for your expertise from any of the defendants or the representatives regarding the Noah Presgrove case? Not an attorney, so did my best to be all-encompassing. Please don't take it as an attack, it's a question. Many have due to it being discussed in other groups. Recently, I'm just trying to get a clear-cut answer. WJ Heel had responded, says, I am not working, period, not with anyone associated with this case or anyone anywhere in the entire universe at all. I'm not sure I can be more clear. I've spent the better part of the past 4 years fighting for my life. My life has been a lot of what's in this photo. I am not working with anyone, and I mean no offence to the defendants in this case, but it is highly unlikely any of them can afford my rates. If I were currently working, I'd charge $675 an hour, and if I have to travel out of Chicago, $7,500 for each day. I'm not bragging, those just happen to be my rates. The cases I work on sometimes involve billions of dollars of potential damages. My clients are generally large multinational corporations being sued by other large multinational corporations. There we go. And there's a photo of him down below waving, I guess going through cancer treatment, whether that's a recent photo or a past one. But, you know, if a person's put in a situation, or they put themselves in a situation where they've got to share their personal story and things that are going on in the background and health-related stuff, it kind of ties back in to what I was getting at in recent time with the emotional thinking, critical thinking video, that some people may feel the need to defend themselves, may feel the need to answer back, to clear up the mess, to try and drown out the noise at times. Sometimes you've got to put yourself out there even when you don't want to, just for the sake of stopping all the questions and all the unnecessary stuff going on. Doesn't always work, though. Do we have any comments and responses by people? Well, there's only one response there. Judy says, good call on this one for sure. I do believe as much as he posts, he must be writing a very long novel. So is Judy implying that WJ Heel is faking their cancer? Is that what's being suggested here? Indirectly. Robbie, you are ridiculous. You write more than he does, and it's all based on rumours you read on the pages. Right. I thought there was another comment somewhere. but unless it's disappeared, or maybe that was just in particular to that one, because the overall comment there, get off, by Andrea Tuprov says, I always say, if you take out all the rumours in this case, you start to see a much clearer picture. When you realise almost everything put out there is unverified, small town gossip, your theories may start to change. I literally still see people saying, you're Jose, my profile is clearly real, yet I'm still called a fake sometimes. Detective skills are lacking. I mean, I remember in the past, Andrea Chuprov, I think they're a viewer on my channel, but I never knew it until I realised the first name, Andrea. I could be wrong. I could still be wrong. This isn't meant as a negative, but if Andrea is watching my videos or channel and it's the same person here, in the past I thought it was two separate people. I guess it's because of the last name Chuprov, and I don't know why I just thought Andrea was some Russian person or from Russia, because I used to say the name Andrea Chuprov. I don't know. I just thought they were Russian. I don't know. But regardless, it wasn't a big deal. Beside that, in regard to gossip, theories and ideas and how it's declined, I think it's now time for Warlike Wrath to step in. It is now time to get deep. When it comes to the situation with theories and ideas, not everything has to be a conspiracy. Some people can twist a person's theory into a conspiracy one as a means of downplaying the importance, making a mockery of it. It's a tactic, a means of manipulation. It's happened extensively in the Kenny Veach case and extensively by media groups and outlets to downplay the importance of what's at hand and what could be true. At the end of the day, a theory tends to be an idea, and an idea can stem back from an opinion, and an opinion can stem back from what one is emotionally thinking. However, it won't always be down to emotions, because if it's kept in check and in balance with critical thinking, a critical thought can lead to an idea, a theory, which may hold value, which may make sense, but not always. Some can be quite outlandish, a great reach, hard to believe, but really, at the end of the day, reality is, it doesn't matter how wacky or wild your theory could be. If there is evidence or material to support it, then it becomes real, and then people start listening, and then there's more talking about it and less downplaying, and there's less ridicule. I've seen it in many different ways. What I'm speaking of is from experience and how it's gone for me in previous cases, more specifically true crime, with what I believed in, with what I theorized, with what I was thinking, and people downplayed it. People called me an idiot. People ridiculed. People attacked me. The lot. And guess what? After 2 to 3 years of having to put up with it all, and the way I was treated, guess what? In certain areas and aspects, my theories, my ideas, my map analysis mostly turned out to be true and correct at the end of the day. So I was able to stand up, literally, because it's recorded in one of my videos in the past, stand there and pat myself on the back for having to keep my mouth closed, put up with the attacks, and end up being right at the end of the day. All based on a theory, all based on an idea without the hard evidence to back it up, all based on that without it being all verified at the time. But slowly, eventually, things were added in or brought to light publicly, which tied in line with what I was saying. You can use patterns, trends, you can use your gut feeling, you can also use what's currently available and what's out there and branch off. A lot of true crime channels cover a case start to finish or when it ended, tell the story time, and that's it. I come into a case, I expand on it, the what ifs, where it branches off from there, whether it's truly the case, whether it's truly correct, or it could be wrong. Sometimes it can be hit and miss, but if done correctly, with appropriate language and wording, the times when you're wrong, it does not impact the case. The times when you're right, it complements the case. What other people have done, for example, in the Noah Presgrove case at times, have used emotional thinking, translating it into a theory idea, but sometimes masking their words as a fact when it's really not. Gets out of hand, gets out of proportion, Maybe Chinese whispers 2 takes over, causes misdirection, causes confusion, causes headaches, and can harm the case or the community in some way, or even cause false hope within maybe the victim's family or victim's friends to the case or a case in general. I actually have seen that within the Dylan Rounds case, where other people worded things as facts when they were actually opinions and theories. And in the end, they were saying, yeah, it's just opinion, it's just a theory, that's all. Or they tried backtracking on that excuse. Well, if any of that was true, they should have used, in my opinion, what I think. This is where I stand. This is my opinion. This is my theory. No, they worded it as, this happened, that happened. You know, like language of certainty. The equivalent to what some have said in the past, where they said, not me, but others, that Jack Newton killed Noah Presgrove. Jack knows because Jack killed Noah. That's how people have worded it. People who say that could be basing it on an opinion more so, a theory, an idea based on what people think and feel, even their gut instinct. But wording it like that does not come across as an opinion. When you say, Jack Newton killed Noah Presgrove, it sounds more like a statement. It sounds like it's already known of, said with a level of confidence and certainty, like a fact, like how you'd reiterate if it was. If you was to say, based on how things have gone, based on what's been said and certain actions and how Jack Newton has acted, I think, in my opinion, Jack Newton may know more, or possibly may be directly involved in the outcome of Noah's death. That is not said by me, but that is an example of what other people could have said. So it stayed as an opinion. It was validated to an extent. It wasn't rejected, and it didn't lead to any consequences for the case, for the person involved, and for the person saying it in the first place. But how many people have that self-control to say it the right way and to use appropriate language? Not enough people, not many. We've also seen other people who may interpret some language, wording, and opinions and treat it as a fact, which is a bit of a hypocritical move because they've done it themselves in other ways. No better. Like, if there has been a supposed threat, there's been a certain line used and another person has interpreted it and thought, oh my God, I'm under threat, this is dangerous, this is really bad. Then I've looked at it and thought, what are you on about? It's not that bad. There is one exception. I'm just using one example and only one example where a person on an occasion had felt threatened by Brooke Bounds Carter. And they said, hey, Ref, look at this. I'm being threatened by Brooke Bounds Carter. And I looked at it at the time. I looked closely at the language and the wording, and it did not come across as a direct threat. It was more along the lines of joking and messing about in the context of a conversation loosely with a friend, which was then posted public or shared public somehow to the said individual that was being talked about. When you're talked about behind your back, it can feel different and you can interpret it differently. Not every threat has to be face-to-face direct. It can be said in the background and in passing. But at times, certain stuff that's said in passing and in the background that isn't meant to directly target the person, isn't directly meant to be heard by the other person because it's said in passing, it's not truly meant. It's just in the moment, letting off some steam, messing about, joking. It's not truly meant. Other times it can be meant, but other times, not so much. You got to look at the language and wording. And on that occasion, it was just more of a more casual, looser conversation in a slightly dark humour way. It doesn't take away any other potential threats after that, but in that moment, I had to look at that language and wording because the person, the one that felt threatened by BBC had, heated the moment because they're impacted by it. It's impacted them in some way psychologically. They're not going to see it the same way as a level-headed person who's not impacted whatsoever. It's like when you get psychologists, therapists, and counsellors. They do what they do because it's their job, it's their role, their expertise, and they do the best that they can help, they do the best that they can to help someone who may be struggling in some way. But the reason why it's easier for them is because there is no emotional connection in the first place. Yes, a rapport is built with the client to get to know one another, to build that trust, to be able to open up, create a safe space and environment. What's said in the room stays in the room and all of that. But there's no deep connection. There's no deep emotional connection. So by staying disconnected but still caring within the guidelines, it's easier to see everything, to hear everything, to know the navigation, the roadmap on how to recover, what to do, what can be implemented. But if you're connected to someone emotionally, or you're on the receiving end and you're emotionally impacted by something, it's harder for you to process it. It's harder for you to be able to acknowledge or see through what it could actually mean. One person's actions could be different to what they may be thinking or feeling within. And if you're on the receiving end and impacted by it, or at least have an emotional connection with them, depending on how you interpret those reactions, those actions by that said person, you may misinterpret it. But if you've got a stranger that comes on in, that at least knows the context of the situation and the backstory of the person under the circumstances, without that emotional connection, there's no barrier. You're more able to see it for what it really is and what's really going on. But a person that's caught up within it all isn't expected to know it all or to be able to handle it perfect. It's not expected. It's understandable. When referring back to thoughts, theories, and conspiracies and all of that within the Noah Presgrove case, theories and ideas have lost their meaning and value and worth because of how recklessly it's being used in the case. I could do a video tomorrow or the day after without the evidence, without it being verified, and it's just an opinion, and it could be written off quicker because of the actions and behavior of other people that have ruined it for everyone else. You can have ideas and thoughts without evidence. It's the groundwork, it's the framework from where it develops from there and what it could link onto next. To a smaller extent, it's like the equivalent of when you got the police and others within an active case investigation that may have certain ideas, a certain framework, certain feelings and thoughts, which they highlight and then put into play, take action, and try and find evidence to support it. If you remember the general public, you don't go to that length because it's not your role or position or job to do so, but you can still have the basic feelings and thoughts. And then whilst the police or whoever are doing their investigation in the background, when information, data, evidence is retrieved and some of it may be public, it may associate with what you've been saying all the time. What you theorized may be in line with what the police are working with and found. It can happen, and it has happened. I'm talking from experience. My thoughts and ideas were correct in the Dylan Rounds case, and other people pushing it in other reckless ways were wrong. And even when it was proven to be a certain way, they still couldn't agree with it, even when the case was closed. That's how pathetic it was. Look at the Noah Presgrove case. In some ways, it's no different. In terms of thoughts and theories and all of that, it's a bit different here because there's a lot more people at play and there's a lot more different possibilities. So I can't just lock in with one outcome, right? With the Dylan Rounds case, it was one victim in an area called Lucin, Utah, which had a population of about 4 to 8 people. 4 to 8 people of an entire area of Lucin, Utah, right? You look at Terrell, Oklahoma, just the party house alone had about 10 to 30, 40 people at some point, or cumulatively. And maybe on the day, 10 to 12, 10 to 15 party goers. In one building, there was more people there than there was in the entire Dylan Rounds case of Lucin, Utah, right? So when you're working with more, there's a lot more to consider. It's harder to narrow down on what's really going on. And depending on what is collected along the way and what's revealed public, there was more revealed public in the Dylan Rounds case with how it was handled and how the parents were compared to the Noah Presgrove situation. It is what it is. So as for thoughts and theories, there's only so much you can work off from. Based on the snaps, at least, it kind of goes against Caden Pressey's timeline. That's one thing that is clear. And the thoughts and the theories in the past could Caden have been wrong? Did he make a mistake? Is that possible? Well, where's the evidence to prove it? Well, eventually, there was a form of evidence and material to prove or reinforce it. Is it enough? I mean, it provides that perspective, it supports it, but maybe a little bit more wouldn't harm, right? In other ways, other forms of evidence to support it. But nevertheless, that's just the aspect of the thoughts and theories. But they can also be manipulated, as I said. When it comes to just the general theme of manipulation, though, that is what we really need to focus in on right now. So, just as a heads up, we're going to get deep once again. So hopefully that's okay. If you need time to prepare or pause the video, feel free to do so. If you need to catch up, whatever it needs to be, or you need to rewind back, you do what is best for you. I'm referring to true crime cases, and it can apply to the Noah Presgrove case as well. The theme of manipulation. I partially touched upon it in the last video when it came to emotional and critical thinking. How some emotional thinkers can be exploited, taken advantage of at times, depending on what group of people they are around. If they're around a dark presence, bad influences, they can be, influenced in a toxic way within a toxic environment, which leads to a loss of their self, a loss of their identity, their thoughts, and what they originally believed or, considered within the case. They go down a alternative pathway in believing it could be murder when it may not be, and they stick with it. There's almost like a form of brainwashing indoctrination, and they lose themselves, and it becomes tunnel vision. And then down the line, after quite some time of protesting it to be a certain way, which is unnatural, if they ever came to a realization that, upon self-reflection, that wasn't really them or wasn't who they really are by nature, it could come across as a bit of a reality shock, and it can be quite a grounding and unpleasant feeling. And some people may not want to admit that it's not murder, and it could be accidental, because if they've stuck around long enough believing it to be murder, convincing themselves or other people convincing them that to try and admit that they were wrong or realize everything that they've done and the damage that they've caused along the way would be difficult to admit and to swallow and take accountability in some way. And the feeling of being afraid of what other people may think when they return back from wherever they were once at. It doesn't have to be physical distance, it can be mental distance. A person can still be present in the same room, but psychologically, what they may be feeling within, they are distant. Being busy elsewhere, but physically present. Being in a full room, but deep down internally, being the most alone person because of being isolated and alienated by others out there with force against their will, or done subtly without them thinking before it's too late where they can't take action. That is like what I talked about yesterday. It does involve manipulation, and that's how it can apply with the themes of what we're talking about. Thoughts and theories can be manipulated by people, and words can be twisted. Interpretations of words, lines, and quotes can be manipulated as well to suit a certain narrative, to fit a certain agenda. Certain photos and videos and other stuff can be considered as a form of manipulation as well. Manipulation can run inside with corruption too, but if it's by members of the general public, they're not trying to protect people, but they might want an outcome to be a certain way, or they just emotionally are too charged and believe it to be a certain way without taking in mind the other possibilities. It can get to a point where manipulation overrules corruption, and it's just a separate standalone theme, right? Doesn't always have to be deep, but it can still be impactful to the case and other people at hand. Some people that may manipulate may have once been manipulated themselves, just like how a bully or a person that was bullied can become a bully themselves. A person that's been hurt can be the one that hurts someone else. It's like a chain reaction. Not always, but sometimes it can happen. But beside that, to start off with, manipulation tends to be a bad thing. It involves making adjustments in possible unnatural ways. Can be physical manipulation, but normally it's mental, psychological manipulation, and it's normally external, normally, where a person is doing it towards someone to get a change, to make a person change for their own benefit, because they want to, and more. You can get it where in harmless, innocent ways you might manipulate an inanimate object, manipulate a light fitting, manipulate cables, loose wires and connections and electronical devices. And that form of manipulation is physically making adjustments and changes to undo a problem, to fix something. Certain forms of manipulation is done for positive reasons to fix. A form of positive physical manipulation can be manipulating the joints in the fingers, in the shoulders, manipulating bones, manipulating tendons and muscles when it comes to a massage, right? But even though that's done for the good of things and to help someone, that form of physical manipulation, there still has to be a form of consent and a bit of a rapport, as in you're here at a massage place or you're here at a spa. You might get certificates and reviews online which show that they are trusted and it's a real established place, and here are the experts. This is who you have today, or this is who you could have today, and you've got the choice as well, as in who manipulates your joints and heals and fixes you, your body. That you're given the choice, that you're not forced, you're not rushed, and there is a professional, genuine service at hand. That form of manipulation is completely different to the dark manipulation, what you can see in true crime, digitally, online, and physically in real life. People who are within a case may manipulate to try and divert attention and focus elsewhere. People within a community and not in the case can manipulate just to suit their own narrative or agenda, because they may not like someone within the case and they want them to pay even if they are innocent. Other people may want to manipulate a case just because of their own ego, a certain level of functioning narcissism where they believe that they're always right, or they've convinced themselves to a point that they are always right and never wrong. So if there's ever a time where it feels like that they could be questioned or undermined because they did get something wrong, or they made a prediction which didn't go right, they may try and twist, they may try and use tactics and methods with wording or language or verbal communication or timestamps or photos or evidence, or get other people in, fake witnesses, to try and back them up to save their credibility and to save their perfect clean record in unnatural ways just for the sake of their own gain. It can be for petty reasons, small scale, it can be for greater, darker reasons. And that level of manipulation, the intensity of it, can be associated to the scale of the situation and the person at hand. It doesn't always have to be big scale. It can be small scale. It can be very small things. It can be very petty, but it's still a problem. And somewhere down the line, it can still cause issues. So, when we're referring to dark manipulation and how it can affect people on the receiving end on a personal level and note, or a general basis online, such as with true crime cases, communities, DMs, private messages, wherever there can be manipulation. Unnatural adjustments being made, and normally mentally done, psychologically unwiring a person's original self, their core beliefs and values and their worth within this world, manipulating and making those adjustments to change it so the way they perceive things is in the way you do. You're changing their vision to suit and match your own. You're making even physical alterations and changes so they are either in line with you, equal, or a soldier, part of an army, in a very unnatural way. That's if it's on a mass level. That can be a form of brainwashing, indoctrinating, where you get one person, then another and another. It's like a recruitment process, kind of like grooming in a sense. Changing people, manipulation tactics, maybe bribing, maybe rewards and gifts with a hidden debt down the line that has to be repaid back as a means of listening and changing. You know, that debt can have its own emotional weight on a person that wasn't aware of it to begin with. Sometimes, or most times, the manipulators appear nice, welcoming and kind and understanding at first, and then they slowly chip away at the unknown sufferer or soon-to-be sufferer. I don't quite know it. The forms of manipulation can sweep someone under the rug without them even knowing and be in the grasp or wrapped around someone's finger. And it can even be a slow, constricting process in which they don't even know it's happening until it's too late. You can't blame the person. An individual that has gone through that, they can't blame themselves. It's understandable if somehow they do blame themselves, as in they should have done more, they should have avoided someone, they shouldn't have been there, they should have resisted, they should have stood up. But this is the thing. At times, the whole point of manipulators can be associated with levels of intelligence. Because at the end of the day, to manipulate and to do it successfully, and especially at times when you're dealing with a strong-minded individual, any form of breakdown, any form of changes made to them, and in general, does require a level of intelligence, functionality, and the means to be able to systematically break down someone psychologically and change who they are as a person, how they think, how they act, and to the point of where if you let them go, they don't change, they stay the way you've programmed them to be. That's how deep and disturbing it can be, in a way. That can occur online, it can occur in forums and private chats, it can apply in real life, it can apply behind closed doors, maybe domestic situations. It's all around. And with the true crime cases on a mass scale, if you get an army, you get a cult in an unnatural way, then you've got an army, you've got volume. That's when it's more dangerous, because a creator only has so much power, but having a big audience, they are the voters. They're the ones that vote, they're the ones that can make change for better or for worse. And if one person has programmed people to all be a certain way, it's unnatural. And in numbers, it can be damaging for a case. But equally, it can be just as damaging in its own unique ways, if not harder, when it's a one-on-one situation and if it is done more privately. If there's no witnesses about, that can be hard. But the reality is, when it comes to the aspect of intelligence, a manipulator can have physical intelligence, mental intelligence, emotional intelligence. Having that depth and that knowledge in language, verbal communication, cues, body language, to be able to question someone, to make them doubt themselves. Aspects of gaslighting too, where it's like you question everything that they say and do. Who they once were and what they stood for, their routines, their patterns, their likes, their dislikes, their hobbies, their activities, their beliefs, their thoughts, their theories in general, all gets peeled away and chipped at. Everything that they do and say, every routine that they used to do is now questioned and undermined by someone else, asking them, should you be doing that? Are you sure about this? And then if there is a bit of a report, because this questioning, this breakdown, this psychological warfare isn't going to happen immediately, because in order to be able to use that emotional intelligence and then add on with the intelligence of the manipulation, you got to build a rapport with someone where an individual welcomes a person in a nice way, in a calm setting, make the other person feel comfortable and relaxed. And then when they do come on in, that's when things change, and slowly the bad person chips away at the innocent individual, makes them question everything, questions themselves, adds in with their own opinions and thoughts when maybe it's not welcomed or needed. And because of that connection, that safe space originally, that situation where the other person the one on the receiving end can look up and listen because of an influencer effect. If a level of intelligence is expressed in which the other person who is unknown to the damage that's being done looks up to that intelligence and respects it, they're more likely to listen to that person's opinion. So things that they did and said and associated with, they may change their patterns. They may discard things that they like. They may discard things that they do or associate with for the sake of listening to that manipulator, in a way. The power dynamics change to it being one-sided, a level of control, and whether that be in a community online, whether that be somehow in real life, there should be a level of equality within a way, give and take. Listen to them, they listen to you. You give your thoughts, you give your opinions, and then they do the same. But you shouldn't have to change for someone. If any change was going to be made, it's for yourself. But a person that's caught and wrapped up within it all, in a difficult place, they may not get that chance to be able to question it or be able to pull away, because already things have been planted in, like a snake wrapped around, already constricted. A person on the outside looking in, because as said, with true crime, it can come across with strangers online, friends online. You may know of someone that has changed in behaviour. It's not always because they've turned into a bad person or it's by their own doing. It could well be because they've just been around the wrong crowd of people and they've changed in behaviour. I will know. I've seen it in the Dylan Rounds case. There was some people that were okay on my channel, had a good sense of humour and were fine. But the moment they went to a different YouTube channel, they changed in behaviour, changed with attitude, and they came back to me and they were a different person. Didn't see them the same way. They didn't share any resemblance of what they once were. Complete shadow of themselves, completely hollow, toxic and dark. That's how messed up it can be. And that's on a smaller scale. That's on a stranger scale where stranger viewers go over to a different stranger's channel, and that impact and effect is enough. That influencer effect, without any direct manipulation, can change someone for the worse. They come back to you and you see for what they are now. Is it all their fault? Not quite. There's still a responsibility, of course, but there's other people at play, there's other factors at play. Now just imagine if you applied it on a more personal scale over a longer period of time and a form of direct manipulation used. The damage, the impact that could have on someone. So there are friends about, there's people in the community that know of an individual that has supposedly taken a darker path or gone quieter or withdrawn in some ways or has changed or severed ties with others. That might not all come down to directly what that person wants. They may have lost temporarily what they want, what they stood for. Because what's been drilled into their mind is done unnaturally by the presence of someone that is forcing them to change, and not for the better. Not a natural change, but a forced change, with maybe methods of persuasive language, even methods at some point of levels of threatening behaviour, physical or verbal. Once a person's got their teeth or grasp around someone, that's when more can be done in darker ways and without the fear of losing them, because there's already a level of control over that person with opinions and theories of a case, an idea, how it's gone, how it is. How does the person on the receiving end break out of all of that when a wall has been built around them by the hands of one manipulator? And that's why it's important that if there are outsiders about that know or are close to that sufferer, there needs to be a slight level of patience, because even if they've gone dark and they see you as darkness or as an enemy because they've been convinced by the manipulator that anyone that questions that said person must be a bad person, anyone that shows worry or concern is not genuine, feeding false lies and whispering false words into that one person's mind to change how they perceive the world and everyone around them, rewiring that person completely. It can get deep, and to break away from can be difficult, especially if it's a one-on-one situation. It's just about understanding, first of all, because people can break out of it, people can shake the cycle. Others and outsiders can step on in and intervene in a level of intervention to try and pull that person away from the grasp of someone, pull them away from a group, a singular person. Things can break, things can give, and can improve with time. But sometimes, before it's happened, if there are people about in a case or a community online or somewhere in life, and they know of a person that's gone down a dark path or has changed in behaviour, it might not all be down to them and what they want. It might be down to the hands of another person that's at play, like a puppeteer, the puppet master, in an unnatural way. And sometimes those ties, those wires need to be cut from the grasp. So then the manipulator loses that control and has no more effect or power over that one person struggling. And then pull that struggling person aside, but then with a level of patience and understanding to slowly warm them up, metaphorically. Because to remind them is important, to show it in other ways too is. But speaking in general, when it comes to a manipulator who could likely be emotionally and mentally intelligent, that does not make them a good person. By being intelligent does not make you a good person by default. You're intelligent, but it comes down to how you apply that intelligence and how you use it. With greater intelligence comes higher responsibility. If in a situation, whether it be natural, because sometimes when in the presence of someone, if there is a feeling of imbalance when it comes to one another's intelligence levels or roles, responsibilities in life, or dislikes and likes and trends and hobbies, if there is an imbalance in which one person feels less or lesser than the other, there's a lack of equality, it can create a level of discomfort. And sometimes with the intelligence aspect, if there's an imbalance, or at least it feels like that, it can be intimidating and scary when you're around someone or a group of people that you may perceive as a higher level. You don't match them. You're not on their level. That's how you may think. That might be by nature, naturally, just how it is. It could be because of the past, something's happened, maybe a past form of manipulation, a past form of gaslighting, which has changed how you see things, how you question stuff, how you question yourself, your own presence, your own value. What can you bring? What effect do you have? How it can chip away at all of that, leaving a more bare version of yourself, or at least that's how you may think. So then when in the presence of other bad people, or even genuine people, it can be perceived as a threat. If things have already happened previous, the defense mechanisms kick on in, where you perceive someone in a better role or a better position, physically, mentally, visually. Then you question and doubt yourself, as in, should you be around that person? The self-defense mechanisms kick on in quick to try and protect yourself from any hurt. You don't want to be ridiculed. You don't want to be looked down upon. You don't want any tension or conflict either. You don't want a repeat of the past. You come across an intelligent person, you might worry that they may take advantage of that intelligence and use it over you if it's already been done in the past by someone else. It's nothing personal, and on the opposite end, it's got to be taken as nothing personal. It's just being cautious and very, skeptical, because if it has happened, it could happen again. You don't want that for yourself. So the mind takes over and some of the defense mechanisms kick on in. Hypervigilance, hyperactive, hyperarousal, scanning the area for threats. Even a person that's just standing still but could come across as a certain authoritative figure or a higher degree of intelligence because of how they talk and what they say, that could be perceived as a direct threat to you and your safety and even your own mental health, that you may disengage with conversations or not even begin conversations. You may not start conversations in fear of where it may lead to and being put on the spot with a certain question, needing a certain answer, being put on the spot where you may not be able to give that answer with their question and feeling like you'll be punished for it when maybe you won't, but it's that what if. A lot of what ifs, and the mind considers all of that and overthinks to eliminate all signs and possibilities and aspects of being hurt. Eliminating it all, considering it all, and avoiding it all, or avoiding certain areas of conversation, or completely avoiding just the overall interaction of a person or group of people for self-protection. It's very understandable. It does make sense. It shouldn't have to be that way, but unfortunately for people under certain circumstances, there might not be much choice. There might not seem like another way around it. See, reality is, just with the intelligence aspect, in the past, things could have gone wrong, could have been handled incorrectly. The true aspect of an intelligent person isn't to just simply have an intelligent conversation with someone, but the true aspect of what makes a person intelligent, even if they are intelligent to begin with, is by leveling with the other person at hand, not lowering oneself to their intelligence level, because then that's a direct insult and very telling. But it's about, regardless of what level you're at, the conversations you have and the way you present yourself and communicate, even if it's just body language, it's done in such a way that you bring and rise that person up alongside you, so they see the same, they feel the same, they hear the same, and they can have a conversation back with you without any fear of worry or doubt. That you have the ability or the presence to eliminate all that worry, that doubt, that concern, that lack of stability. You rise someone up naturally, even if certain words or communication is slightly adjusted so they're better acquainted to it. Certain words of familiarity, a slightly different tone of voice instead of shouting or instead of talking monotone. Just little adjustments made to make them feel more welcome and on your level. And not immediately, but with time, in other ways, you can remind them of what they once were. You can remind them of what they haven't lost, just that certain aspects have been locked away or, as a metaphorically speaking, banished. Because, like when we talked about the manipulation area, and even in true crime cases, what people once believed it to be as for a cause of death, as for a time of death, as for a location of death, may have changed unnaturally, and they've adopted the mindset of another person because they've been told to, they've been convinced, they've been persuaded, they've been threatened, they've been through all different types of methods and gaslighting and all of that. So they lack that ability to think for themselves because they feel that they've lost themselves. And if they've pulled themselves out or someone has helped as for intervention, where do they stand now? A slow process of a form of stability, a form of security, a form of reassurance, so they can claim back what they once were, or that when you do have conversations and when you do talk about cases and other stuff, you level with them so they rise naturally, or you assist in them rising so you're on the same wavelength, no competition, no intimidation, no worry or concern, to the point where they can rebuild themselves, rebuild their mind, which they felt that they lost, rebuild their sense of trust, which they sense was broken at some point in the past, resense and repurpose and help them rebuild their hope and trust in there is still light out there and it doesn't have to be taken away. And on other levels of varying degrees, being able to allow them specifically, being allowed to rebuild their heart on their own terms at their own pace, without any interference, without any control. It's on them and they can do it when they feel strong enough. That would be a true level of intelligence, and it being used correctly. Another form of intelligence on a more casual level, and this can be amongst discussions with friends and friendship groups and all of that, whereas if a person was mistreated very badly by a person behind closed doors, and the one on the receiving end, the sufferer, had said that they can come across as intelligent, or they may literally be intelligent as for their job, what they do, how they present themselves in the public, on YouTube, on TikTok, on Facebook, on Reddit, right? That public display to make it seem like everything is all fine and perfect and happy, then behind closed doors, completely different story. In a situation like that, the one struggling, the one suffering could, yes, still raise the point and say, well, that said individual is very intelligent and smart, and it scares me because of how intelligent they are and what they can do with it for the wrong reasons. Well, counterpoints could be, if a person was that intelligent, for example, if they were that emotionally intelligent, they would and should have treated you the way you deserve to be treated, within reason and for the good. If they have mistreated someone, clearly they're not a smart person. If that someone, the one on the receiving end, if their qualities were they were kind, they were nice, they were understanding, they were patient, they were innocent, and all of that, then they don't deserve to be treated badly. And if an intelligent person treats someone like that badly, then clearly that said individual is not intelligent whatsoever to be acting that way in the first place. Not a smart move, is it? But that's on a more casual level. In the true crime setting and cases, people thought it couldn't get that deep or dark. It definitely can. I've seen it myself, and I've seen it externally. I've seen it to the point in true crime in other areas and fields, like with the Dylan Rouse case, where people in communities and YouTube channels felt that they had to serve someone, but they felt that they owed a debt to a person, and there was no way of being able to, break out of that mold. They felt they couldn't escape. And if they tried, where would they go? What would they do? Sometimes when a connection in an unnatural way, slowly, dark and constricting, to force and make it seem like that person is tied and severed to, and tethered to that cult-like leader or person persona, made to believe that they can't be without them or can't function the same. That's the true level of manipulation, and that can happen publicly in public spaces. And some people reached out to me and said, I support or I watch your videos, Raf, but I also do the same over there. Some did because they just wanted to and their friends were over there, and others did because they had no choice, because they felt if they did pull away, bad things would happen. Some people did try pulling away. They were threatened. Their locations were threatened to be revealed public, forms of doxing, forms of insults and lines and bad stuff said in the background. So they felt that they couldn't escape. They were trapped and they just had to serve their master, stuck in cobwebs, a spider's web. You try pulling away, you try and going in one direction, the webs will pull, it'll alert them, and they will pull you back into their grasp so you can't escape. That's on YouTube. That was back then, but I saw it and I saw people, and people reached out to me about it. Some people tried pulling away, didn't work, and other people did quickly and defiantly and got away with it. Some people had to play the long game, please the original person, be in their court, in their defense and all that, back them up, and then eventually slowly pull away when they don't expect it and they can escape. If that can happen online, it can certainly happen in real life as well. If that can happen on YouTube, it can definitely happen on a slightly more gated private community on Facebook at times. Other situations where people have fought against or considered other things in question had led to just being outright kicked and removed and blocked on Facebook pages. As bad and annoying as that may be, it might be the best case. Someone, a toxic person, has removed you. You have been removed, but you have distanced yourself indirectly from a toxic place or person, which isn't always a bad thing if you think of it in a positive way. It's just the times where when you want to get away and they won't let you, even if you kick, fight or scream verbally, on Facebook and somehow, or on YouTube or a channel, and it's like the power's against you, that is problematic, right? So when considering all of this, you consider it that when you come across human behavioural changes within cases, within the Noah Presgrove case, consider that what may be at play in the background or on the sideline, that there might be controlled to some extent by another person, or just that there's been a direct or indirect darker negative influence in the background. I know some people have tried slanting it that way towards Warlike Wrath and the dark side, but as I said, ever since, I've looked at it from both sides, from murder to foul play to accident, and back and forth, and returning back to source, returning back to origins. A person, reality is, if a person has truly lost their way, if a person has truly been brainwashed, if a person has truly been manipulated, if a person has truly been paid off, persuaded in different ways of manipulation and tactics, they go in a different direction. They don't return back. They don't change. They stay a certain way and never look back. Well, you see how it's gone. Looking back, returning back, looking at death, looking at murder, looking at who could be responsible. I still have videos lined up, thoughts and theories and map analysis which look into the perspectives of foul play. I still have videos to do on foul play in the case. And guess what? People on the dark side aren't going to throw the toys out the pram. They're not going to complain or protest. They might not agree with it. They may not watch it, but that's it. That's the worst case scenario. Wow. You see the perspective? And yet, from other sides, when I've considered other ways, it's been the other sides which have been the ones that have snapped more. That's the more manipulating side from people. Sometimes the dark side aren't always the manipulators. It can be the contrast, the other spectrum. I'm just speaking metaphorically there. If we're talking about real darkness and dark people with their means and ways, well, then that is bad. That's not excusing that, right? So you got the idea and perspective of the manipulation, the tactics, the methods, the depth, the motives, the consequences, the cost of it, and the person on the receiving end of it all. How it's important to acknowledge it can be very hard, very difficult on them, very challenging on them in dealing with it daily, dealing with it whenever, and dealing with trying to get away from it. And even when a person gets away from it, or is freed, or someone else steps in as intervention, the battle doesn't stop there. For some, it can be the beginning, because then it's dealing with the fallout, the after effects, refinding oneself, or trying to change, trying to sever any darkness that's attached onto them, which to them may have defined who they are now, and worry how other people may think about it. But it's always important for those that are still around and present to remind them their darkness is an extension, not of who they really are, and not of what they've truly lost. It's still within. It may have just been locked away because of what was drilled into their mind previously of what they can and can't do, and how they've changed in unnatural ways. But they can go back to being themselves, or becoming a new version of themselves without the direct ties to the past. The feelings of the past can remain, and can remain important, because they are important to that person, and they should remain important as to where they once were, where they are now, where they could be. But in terms of the darkness, the presence of these specific individuals, they don't deserve to live in, rent-free in a person's mind. Easy to say that, because the person who's actually dealing with it may not be able to just knock it off or shake it off. But with a slow process of understanding, it can be eased with time. The presence of someone has been removed or no longer about, but the atmosphere presence of what was once there can still feel in here, whether it be noise, whether it be a sensation, whether it be like a memory. That can ease within reason and with methods and application and others about for that support. But it's just about acknowledging that for the person that's broken away from a cult, broken away from a group, broken away from the presence of someone, it doesn't just instantly become easy or back to normal. It's where the real battle and the barriers begin, and just that level of perspective along the way, because external perspective is needed most there, because when they do get out, that's when they feel most unclothed, metaphorically, exposed to the environment, exposed to the world. It's like the equivalent, symbolically, as if you were imprisoned in jail for something you didn't do for a few years or months, and then when you finally are proven to be innocent, you're released. You go outside for the first time. It feels like things have changed and things have moved on without you. Visually, auditory, feels like a lot's changed, and it can be overwhelming when, resensing and reestablishing your either digital footprint or your physical footprint in the moment. There is a process to recalibrate the mind, recalibrate the body, recalibrate the heart, and depending on the dysfunctions or the impacts of the past and previous ways of people, it might be hard to break out of that mold. And that's why it needs external presence of people about. So if you know someone in a case, or someone may look or appear lost, they may have broken away, they may have departed, they may have been kicked out of a group, they may have been kicked out of the door, and now they're left, or were once left, somewhat damaged and somewhat lost, and they need to be redirected, but not in a controlling way. That's the important thing. For anyone that is watching and wants to know how to deal with helping a person that has gone through manipulation, to whatever extent that might be, even if it's on a small scale, but when you come across that person, you don't tell them what to think. You don't tell them what to do. If they apologize, you don't tell them that they don't need to apologize. You give an opinion. In true crime cases where they say emotional thinking or opinion-based thinking versus critical thinking is most important. But when you're dealing with an emotional or a sensitive area or topic, sometimes opinion-based thinking is what's needed most, because critical thinking, even if it's done with the mean to care and to help, and critical thinking following guidelines and the robotic structures which maybe psychologists and therapists could offer, when it's supposed to be more of a personal connection or a more casual setting without all that deepness, sometimes the critical side, where you try and do and say things because you mean well, can come across as an attack on them, which they're not ready mentally for to listen to or consider. So a simple opinion is what can break that dark cycle which they've been exposed to. So if they say sorry, if they disagreed with you, or they said that you were wrong, or they were slightly sensitive in a certain area as to what they may think on a case or an outcome, when they say sorry, you just say, it's okay, it's fine, it doesn't matter. If you said, don't apologize, don't even bother, that sounds quite threatening in a way. And depending on the sensitivity of the situation, they may see it as a challenge, direct conflict. It might be an indirect trigger point to a contrast, but the same theme of being told what to think and what to do in the past. They don't want that again. They don't want a memory relapse of being told what they can and can't do. They want to be given a space where they can do and think what they want in the moment within reason, without the fear of consequence or punishment, or fear of a total big reaction to it. Just a simple opinion, as in, it's fine, don't worry. Well, actually, maybe the term don't worry, as innocent as that may mean, that could come across as a demand or an order. Just casual, non-challenging words, non-challenging demands, no orders, no being spoken to or spoken at, but spoken with, talking with them, reacting with them, providing casual perspective with them, like the equivalent to what we said earlier with an intelligent person and a conversation, bringing them up on par, on level with yourself. No competition, no lowering your own self, but raising them up naturally so they're in line. And then it creates, if done over time, a level of stability, security, and reassurance. It does ultimately come down to the depth of who you know and who they are and how you're connected with them, right? There's only so much that you can do for people. There's only so much that you can say to those that you may know of very well, or more so, those you may only know of partially or on a very small scale. If they're a stranger to you, you could do like the minimal, as in just opinions and thoughts without demands. If it's someone you know a bit better, like a friend, an online friend within a community or a case, then there'll be obviously a level more of emotional thinking and care, but it's still got to be done within reason. You could say, in other words, it's like trying to help snap them out of a dark cycle, but the snapping part is a metaphoric word to an action, which is actually more over time with a level of patience and understanding, because even if they don't say it or show it, deep down, they probably want to be understood and heard and listened to for once in life, and likely they want to be remembered as well. For things that they say, things that they do, they want for someone to be able to remember those aspects, to highlight the importance and to show that they are of value and have impact in a positive way for someone to be able to remember it in the first place. There's a lot that can go on within which they may not say out because they're not in a position yet to say it. Things, what they want or need, may be invisible to yourself. But if it's done naturally and there's a level of consideration within reason, those invisible things can be sensed within yourself as a gut feeling to slowly undo the conditioning of the past. I'm talking in a vague way because I've done previous case videos, as in divide and conquer and tactics to cause doubt in communities and fake accounts to cause tension and people taking it out on one another, on the wrong people, and it implodes on itself. It's about preventing that. And in times when that has happened, it's about trying to rebuild it. So either rebuild a community, rebuild the trust in someone, rebuild the heart of someone, rebuild the mind of someone, rebuild the hope of someone. But in this particular case, it's not rebuilding it for them. It's allowing them to have the tools to rebuild themselves under their own terms and conditions. And for you or for others to be patient and understanding in that process. There was a process for them to get to where they once were, where they are now. There was a process to get from where they are now to in the future. Methods behind each ways and methods. But these methods are more natural and more open compared to what was like in the past. That's a big difference. So, if you want, apply those methods and tools in the future with the Noah Presgrove case, with future cases, or if there's any new groups or Facebook pages that open up, or any Reddit pages or forums that appear, just handle it with caution for yourself so you don't fall in that trap, but also for you if you come across someone else that had gone down a dark way or is in the process of being around the wrong crowd of people or the wrong person. Even before, though, things may happen or escalate, you can't tell people where they can and can't go or what they should or shouldn't do, because that will only push other people away further, and for them to confirm with themselves that what the darker force is saying by twisting it and saying, look at those people telling you what you can and can't do. Are you going to stand for that? And then that person will say, no, I'm going to do my own thing. I'm going to listen to you instead. That's where it's the beginning of the end. So before that even happens, you come across people, don't be telling them what they can and can't do, just suggest and give an opinion. How it grows later when helping someone and supporting them, that same attitude can be applied to the very beginning. The beginning of the end, the same, how it starts and how it ends. But technically it doesn't end, it just grows from there. But how it starts, opinions, so it doesn't push people away. And when it comes to helping, opinions, so it doesn't push people back, so they don't regress back into the dark ages. That's what I mean, how it starts and how it continues onwards, more so. With that all being said, hopefully the video helps in some way and it makes just sense in general. My name's Warlike Wrath. If you'd like to hit the like button, if you'd like to share the video for that awareness, if you want to check out the full playlist on the case, top right corner of the screen. If you're on mobile or tablet device, if you swipe across down below, there should be a hype button. That'll help push the video out there furthermore. With that all being said, we'll leave it there for now. Thanks for watching. Shout out to those that have watched in the background. Goodbye and good night for now.